Welcome in, everybody. Good Thursday evening. Today is March 13th, 2025. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear in the chat. Also, go ahead and like the stream, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Whether you're watching this live during it or after the fact, would definitely love for you to go ahead and do that so we reach more people. Also, we're literally like knocking on the doorstep of 40,000 subscribers. We've been right here for basically a couple weeks now. So if you want to help us get there, definitely go ahead and do so. Also, going to have a special guest tonight that will be joining us. Brady will be on in just a moment, but we're going to give a second for everyone to filter on in before we do that and bring them on in. What you're currently seeing here is a live cam from northern Alabama, Hatton, Alabama, and we've got some severe storms out there right now, some big hail producers. You can kind of see just the edge of this anvil cloud right into here. So, nice sunset over Alabama. The calm before the storm is what we're calling it because, unfortunately, I think by the time we get to Saturday, violent tornado is going to be a very real concern. And guess what? Today I get to use some of that meteorology degree and some of that mesoscale meteorology I've been learning. We're going to do some sounding analysis this evening, really get into the nitty gritty science here on why this could be a big deal. We're going to talk about storm relative helicity, energy helicity. We're going to talk about bulk shear. We're going to talk about thermodynamics, CAPE, SIN, DCAPE. We'll talk about it all and get down into the fun stuff. So again, go ahead, like the stream if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the latest notifications, and let me know where you're watching from. And with that said, I'll go ahead and bring in my guest speaker, Brady. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Harold, it's fantastic to be back on here. Of course, we love our winter weather, but we have big time severe weather, so we're here back to discuss that. Appreciate you having me on again.
Yeah, I think obviously talking severe weather probably isn't, it's not something that you get excited about like winter weather, but just as important. And again, the storm system is going to be the real deal. So we'll talk about it all from the plains to the mid-Atlantic to the deep south to the southeast and up into the northeast. All right, got folks watching from a couple different places. What do I think about northern Illinois, just north of Chicago? Brandon, I think a wind threat will be the biggest kind of there into the Chicago metro. A pretty feisty squall line tomorrow, I think, is definitely going to work through that region. And we'll talk about that here in the stream tonight. Christy watching from South Ohio. So definitely appreciate that, Christy. I've got a little bit of a internet hiccup. I think we'll be all right. There we go. We're back. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. So the internet's been a little weird in my apartment recently, so if it cuts in and out, I apologize about that. Hopefully, it's not too bad of a loss of connection, but we should be okay. All right. So Julie watching from Joplin, Missouri. Joplin could get some storms out of this one. West Virginia going to get some storms. The Charlotte area going to get some storms. Georgetown, South Carolina going to get some storms. Same for Rock Hill. So yeah, a lot of folks going to get a lot of pretty active weather from this one. I'll also let everyone know I am fighting my yearly March sinus. Not quite an infection yet. Hopefully it doesn't get there, but whatever I've got is not fun. So hopefully the Zyrtec I took and a good night's rest will get me back on track. But if I sound a little stuffy or if I stop and blow my nose or something, bear with me. It's that time of the year. Also, I will potentially be storm chasing this thing. In fact, I definitely will be. I just don't know if it'll be Saturday or Sunday yet. And I'll have to figure that out. But maybe tonight we can kind of figure that out as we look at some of the models. Chief Fan says, will this be like 2011? I never like comparing events like that. 2011 super outbreak obviously was maybe not once in a lifetime, but definitely a generational type event. So, you never say that something like that is going to happen, but this one definitely has a chance to be very impactful, and we can already kind of see it on satellite. So, Brady, you should be able to see satellite as well. Is it working good on your end?
100% great, Gerald. Looks
All
fantastic.
right. Awesome. So this is what it looks like right now on our satellite loop. We've got basically the big culprit is back out here out west. You can see that trough. I'll also add, we've got this area of spin over the southeast. That's what's kind of fired off some pretty good hailstorms into Alabama today. Kind of that precursor event we've been talking about on the channel. I told you it was on the way. Definitely happened today. But the trough back out west is really going to be what causes the problems here. And anytime you see a trough, that kind of the base of it is digging down this sharply, that's always kind of a sign of trouble. and I think this one's definitely going to bring it. So, just looking at the shape of this thing, Brady, what jumps out to you watching this thing move ashore?
I mean, we're in a pattern right here now, Gerald, where we have deep digging western troughs consistently moving over the country. That's why the eastern U.S. has been a little bit warmer over the past couple weeks than we have been previously. And the timing where our troughs are moving over the central U.S. and the surface low intensifying right at a location where it's in a good spot where the Gulf can provide moisture transport to our country, and it's a multi-day severe weather, high impact severe weather event. And that's kind of what stands out most is, the timing, the size, and the strength of the system when we take a look here on satellite.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty classic look here for severe weather. Definitely cannot argue with that. We got a couple questions here in the chat. I'm sorry, my screen is blown up with notifications right now, so let me try to click through all of them. So yeah, people watching from Cincinnati, New Jersey, Georgia, Indiana. Indiana will definitely get some rough weather out of this one. The good news for Indiana is the timing kind of makes it to where it might not be too terrible. You're kind of in between it, so it's kind of an overnight threat, which is good news there. Topper WX says, can you please do a sounding for South Central Minnesota? Yeah, we can do that here in just a moment when we get to that point. Brett says, Gerald, do you graduate this year? No, I graduate 1 year from now. Next spring is my designated graduation time, assuming all goes to plan. But we're hoping for that. Huntsville, Alabama, definitely going to get some rough weather. Saturday would be the big day for Huntsville. I appreciate that, Kathy. That means a lot. What do you think about Pensacola, Florida? Pensacola could get severe weather on Saturday as well. Maybe like Saturday night into Sunday could be the timing for Pensacola. Thoughts on the HRRR in Alabama and Mississippi? We'll definitely get a better idea with tonight's run. I think the biggest question at this point isn't the environment. I think the environment's going to be very conducive for tornadic activity on Saturday. I think the bigger question now is storm mode, and that's going to be very important in the exact threat we see. Do we see these discrete supercells, or do we see more of a kind of line of storms? And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now on storm chasing is if we get discrete cells, I'll definitely storm chase in Alabama on Saturday. If we get more of a line of storms, I might set this one out just because there's only so much you could do with a line of supercells booking it at 50 knots or 60 miles an hour. So I think that's the biggest question right now for Saturday. That and instability as well is a little bit of a question, but those two kind of go hand in hand in a sense. So yeah, definitely satellite loop looking active, and we are rocking and rolling. Now, this new from the Storm Prediction Center, this is the current outlook. I'll go ahead and move it in a way that you can see it. So obviously the green area is our marginal risk. That's level 1 out of 5. The yellow is a slight risk, level 2 out of 5. Enhanced risk is the orange, level 3 out of 5. And then that moderate risk, that red box, is our level, or that's level 4 out of 5. I think I said enhanced is 3, hopefully, and then moderate 4 out of 5. Now the question is, will we get the classic kind of pink Sharpie to be brought into play, and could we get a high risk? I don't think so for tomorrow, and if we do get a high risk tomorrow, it's probably going to be wind driven somewhere up into here near St. Louis, but that would probably be asking a bit. I'm not quite sure we'll get to that point. And then we look at Saturday's outlook, and also looks very active here with another moderate risk. I think if we get a high risk, Brady, I think it's Saturday, and I think it'll be probably somewhere within this moderate, maybe on the northern side of it. Kind of what are your thoughts there on the potential for a high risk out of this event?
Yeah, certainly. I wouldn't necessarily rule out tomorrow either. Maybe wind driven, Gerald. I know it's not going to be tornado driven. We know that, but there is still strong tornado potential tomorrow. But there could be theoretically, I did see them mentioning possibly a small area to keep an eye on for tomorrow. But I do think Saturday, in terms of strong tornado potential, is the highest impact for sure. And I think there's a good consensus among guidance and meteorologists as well that in this storm prediction center that Saturday is the highest impact tornado potential day for possibly strong to violent tornadoes. Certainly, I think you would agree with that absolutely.
Yeah. And if things uptrend any more than they already have, I definitely think a higher risk will be in order for Saturday through portions of Mississippi or Alabama. Would not surprise me, and I think it would be a worthy one as well. And then that's not the end of it. We get to day 4 on Sunday. Yeah, check it out from Scranton, Philadelphia, through Jersey, all the way through DC, Baltimore, Richmond, Virginia Beach, Raleigh, even into Charlotte, Columbia, Charleston, Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, all the way into Savannah and the Big Bend of Florida, under a kind of 15% risk area here for Sunday. This would be Sunday, March the 16th, so the day right before St. Patrick's Day. Definitely could see some severe weather on that day. So I know a lot of folks, a lot of my viewers are from the East, probably living in this area, so cannot let your guard down either for the Sunday time frame. All right, everyone, again, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the stream so we get it out to more people. We got about 100 people in here, so that's not bad. Definitely, again, severe weather is not something I have as many viewers for, but we're trying to change that. I think definitely going to be good to get more people in here. So go ahead, like the stream. If you haven't, share it. If you want, if you got family anywhere in one of those areas we just talked about, let them know about it. Then come on in, ask questions, and we'll answer them for as long as we go tonight and as many maps as we look at. And with that said, let's go ahead, and I do want to actually go back really quickly. So let me pull up a map real quick. So give me 1 second. You're going to kind of see that flash for a little bit while I pull up a map on the fly here. Probably going to be a lot of this tonight, by the way, because I did not really set the stream up all that much ahead of time, which is okay. We can, again, do things on the fly, and we'll be just fine doing that. All right, so this is our mid-level vorticity map. I think this is going to be pretty useful to talk about the threat and why this is such a big threat. So you can see the trough that I showed you on satellite loop. I mean, it shows up just as clearly on our vorticity map here. We've got this big dip in the jet stream, and with that, we're getting a lot of spin. And it's not just the spin that matters. It's kind of the lift that is being provided by this trough. So I'll go ahead and give you a little dynamic meteorology and synoptic meteorology lesson here. So I've got a dashed line here. That indicates a trough on a weather map, kind of right through the center of this thing. Anytime you're on the right-hand side, see where these kind of lines begin to spread out a little bit. See how they start here super tight and clustered, and then they become a little bit more fanned out. This is an area of what we call divergence aloft. Basically, above our head, what is happening, again, I'll kind of just draw the general circle of where it's happening. And in that region, we've got air that is separating or diverging. And that leads to a kind of a void in the atmosphere where the air is leaving above us. And what's got to happen is it's got to get filled back in. So air at the surface kind of rises up, and rising air is associated with low pressure systems. So what this is going to do is fire off a low pressure and a very strong one. And that low pressure is going to begin to gain fronts at the surface, a cold front, a warm front. And those fronts are then going to cause convergence at the surface. We're going to get storms to fire up in a severe weather manner due to the instability and the wind shear that we're going to have in place. Now, you think it's a lot of divergence there. Let me pause it here. This is tomorrow afternoon. This is about as much divergence as you can get in the atmosphere. This is about as much lift as you could possibly get right into this region. We've just got a tremendous amount of vorticity, and it's not just that map. If I go ahead and find another map for you, and I'm going to do this on the fly as well. We look for any sort of jet streaks on the map. I talk about this a lot when we discuss severe weather. Right into here for your Friday afternoon. This kind of ribbon here you see of very strong winds. It's what we call a jet streak in meteorology. You can kind of draw two lines through it, and I'll circle two portions of it right up here and down here. This are regions of that jet streak where we have even more lift. So again, areas that again could just potentially produce more enhanced thunderstorm activity on Friday. And then we get to Saturday afternoon, and we could potentially see more of the same. I don't see quite as much of a jet streak on Saturday, but what we're going to get still is enough divergence aloft that a very strong surface low is going to develop over this region. And same thing, you're going to get those cold fronts and those warm fronts and a pretty violent or volatile, at least, warm sector in between. So, Brady, anything you want to add on just kind of the nitty-gritty meteorology here between these two maps?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a pretty powerful snowstorm on the northwest side. That when I look at a 500 millibar signature, that impactful. But obviously, the southeast quadrant and the eastern quadrant, just to the east of where you can see the strongest uh, vorticity associated there at 500 millibars. That's oftentimes where you like to look, especially in the springtime, for where some of those strongest, severe weather outbreaks can be. and you can take a look at those height lines rising there in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, sorry, at 500 millibars, and you're able to get that moisture.
By the way, I'll jump in.
Yeah,
You can call it whatever
please.
you want, everyone. It's the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. We do not care. We are not going to play politics, but you're not going to offend us either way. So just
Yeah,
just gonna
and
put
for
that in there.
future
Don't
reference,
you know?
yeah, if I do miscall it, it's because I've been calling it for a long time now. It's like you changing the name of your kid, for example. It would throw anybody
Right.
off. But is so yes, the Gulf of America is our baby, I guess, if you want, if you want to call it that, as a meteorologist. But so that 500 millibar, if you take a look at that signature, that's a sign for that moisture that's going to be pumping in to the U.S. and combining with that very strong divergence aloft we're talking about. And just as you were showing in that 500 millibar wind chart, we look to the southeast and east oftentimes of that big bowling ball over 500 millibars. And that's what's oftentimes associated with these big severe weather outbreaks. And that's what we have in place. So, from a synoptic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And you'd 100% agree with that too, Gerald.
Yeah, it's definitely a classic setup for severe weather. Absolutely. All right. So let's see. Do we? I don't know if we have any questions in here, Brady, that you want to answer that are kind of jumping out here early on. I kind of forgot where I left off on answering questions. So,
We have
um,
someone asking about Virginia, maybe if you want to give some insight onto that potentially. I think Virginia is more Sunday, but if you want to talk about that, I saw a
yeah,
question.
you're talking about the Kings Mountain and Orange, Virginia on Sunday thing.
Yes, yes, unless
Yeah.
you answered that
So
already.
no, I haven't. That's gonna be a that's definitely gonna be a Sunday event in that region. So if you kind of look at the upper level map here for Sunday, uh, it's still just as volatile. And by the way, we forgot to mention this. This is really kind of two storm systems. You've got the one on Friday here. You can see all the energy and spin with it. It's not technically really the same storm that's going to cause the Saturday outbreak. I think that's something a lot of people are maybe not missing, but just not talking about. So watch this piece of energy. It kind of pulls on up out of here and goes all the way up into Canada by Friday and Saturday. And then you get really arguably just a completely separate trough. In fact, I'm looking at it now, it just is a separate trough. If you pause it here, this is tomorrow afternoon. Here's the Friday storm. Behind it is the Saturday storm, going to kind of follow in its wake. And the first storm pulls up, and then you get the secondary trough to develop by Saturday. And then it's that Saturday trough that is going to also move into Sunday. So that's kind of some fun analysis there that I think a lot of people are maybe missing with this one. It's really not the same storm system in the upper levels or at the surface. And then that moves through. So this is Sunday afternoon. You can see everything basically out ahead of that line or that ribbon of vorticity right here is going to be the warm sector to watch out for on Sunday. Now, the timing has been different a little bit. Some of the models have been slowing this thing down a little bit. That would get more people in the threat on Sunday. That would make it a little worse potentially in places like Charlotte and then into the Eastern Carolinas, Eastern Virginia. But if it's a little quicker, and I tell you, somebody who lives in Charlotte, I feel like we forgot how to do severe weather at any point other than 8 in the morning. It's been like squall line after squall line after squall line right at sunrise for what feels like a year straight. So the timing is going to be very important on Sunday for areas in Virginia and North Carolina. And that'll really play a big role in exactly how much weather we end up getting. We also had some questions about Ohio. Ohio, same thing, except for I think Saturday probably would be the bigger threat for you. If we look at our map, here's Saturday afternoon. The question is instability in Ohio. Do we get that warm sector to shoot that far north? If we do, then we could definitely see a big severe weather threat there, including maybe a couple tornadoes. Something to watch for. Let's see. Jackson, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. Saturday, our high temperature is supposed to be 80 degrees, very high temperatures for March. Yeah, Tina, and that's part of it. This big, anytime you're out in front of a big dip in the jet like this, and another reason that this one is going to be so potent is how close it's getting to the Gulf. It's right there at its moisture source. So it's right here grabbing this equatorial tropical air and advecting it northward. So that's one of the reasons it's going to be so warm on Saturday out in that warm sector. Definitely something to note there. So that's a very good point there, Tina. So good stuff. And hey, Bonnie, good to see you. Bonnie is a channel member. By the way, if you want to become a channel member, hit the join button down below for access to cool perks. Morgan says, please mention Danville, Virginia. Yeah, I've actually been to Danville storm chasing before. I've saw a pretty good storm there 2 years ago, I believe. Really nice wall cloud on that one. Um, so yeah, Danville's somewhere I've been, and Danville's in the Sunday threat. And then Scott says Huntsville, Alabama here looks rocking on Saturday. Yeah, absolutely. We're about to get into some of the mesoscale models here in just a moment. But Brady, did you want to add anything to all that slew of information I just kind of threw at everybody?
I'll say one last thing is here. If you take a look, right, Joe, there's a lot of moving pieces here at 500 millibars. And anytime we see that, that's very suggestive that there's going to be an large scale too, like very large two-part system here. There's going to be some changes, I think, to guidance upcoming here. And it should also be noted with less weather soundings available from weather balloon launches as well. Even if just 4 or 5 makes a difference, that's we're not going to see maybe model guidance maybe perform always perfect and maybe if inhibited a little bit more. So I would expect maybe a little bit of changes. We can kind of deep dive into what might some of those changes be eventually, but I wouldn't be too set in stone on the specifics quite yet, especially more so for Saturday and Sunday for that severe weather threat. I think just something to note there. A lot of people want to start going into the specifics and the definites and what exactly is going to happen, but can be kind of dangerous to mislead people sometimes by doing that. So just one last thought there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I wholeheartedly agree. Um, I think something we could also talk a little bit about here is the difference between forecasting winter weather and severe weather. All the time, we do winter weather pretty big on this channel. And by the way, I'm not somebody who just knows how winter weather works. I'm pretty well versed in severe weather and hurricanes. So, definitely, again, stay here year round for updates. But it's a little different. Showing a severe weather map 3 days out and a winter storm map 3 days out are two very different things. And everyone says, oh, it's so difficult to predict snow and ice. They always get it wrong. Folks, you think that's tough? Severe weather is a lot tougher. There's a reason that, I can't tell you if a tornado is going to hit your house tomorrow. I can just tell you the threat area that we could see a tornado. Winter weather, we have a much higher success rate with, I would argue, compared to severe weather. Uh, and I just think that's something people, kind of forget. In fact, Saturday, there's still so many question marks. And Sunday, I don't even really want to begin to kind of get into the super nitty gritty stuff. We're still only just looking at the general area. And I think that's something a lot of people forget whenever talking about severe weather. It's just as, in fact, I would argue even more difficult to predict than winter weather, and then arguably hurricanes, I would say, is the easiest of the three big ones to forecast. Brady, what are your thoughts on that?
In terms of the specifics and the impact, severe weather, it's by far the hardest to be able to predict and tell you what exactly is going to happen because the difference between a tornado being halfway down to the ground and on the ground, Gerald, is so the difference it's so minuscule and that makes a huge difference obviously, especially when you have a very high severe like a high impact environment for strong tornadoes. Like there's so many little nuances that make a huge difference at severe weather, and you won't be able to know until after the case why exactly that happened, and it makes it very difficult to be able. So that's why there's a lot of information that goes around beforehand on what might happen, and I think it's really critical. And Gerald and I were even discussing before stream on why it's important to give you guys the best information on what we're looking at, we think is going to happen, and not highlight, all these different model runs, and just same like winter weather. Let's break down what we think is going to happen the best we can, and highlight what could happen, and not just focus on all the hype scenarios. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of those as well, Gerald, all over social media as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple more questions that came in, and then we'll get to the fun stuff here. Ethan says, "What do you think the tornado risk will be in Owensboro, Kentucky on Friday, just across the Ohio River from Evansville?" Yeah, it definitely could be a threat in Kentucky, especially further kind of west in Kentucky you go, the higher likelihood, excuse me, of a tornado threat there on Friday. Eric says, what about Spartanburg, South Carolina? Spartanburg, luckily the timing, it works out pretty well for you that it's going to probably come through Sunday morning. Again, though, the timing could shift, so it could be more Sunday afternoon. If that's the case, higher end severe weather potential for Spartanburg, South Carolina, right there in the upstate, not far from my hometown of Pickens, South Carolina. Northeast Georgia, same thing. The whole Greenville, Spartanburg kind of viewing area is in that same ballpark. Mills River, North Carolina, the wind gives people flaw. I think it says. I don't know exactly what flaw means, but flashbacks maybe is what that might have supposed
Yes,
to be.
he was
Yeah.
trying to say flashbacks. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and that is going to be a threat, unfortunately. And I don't say that to scare people, that obviously who went through Helene, but if there's a threat for that, we're going to tell you about it. And I do think the wind threat, especially in places like the mountains of North Carolina, the reason Helene was so bad was because you're higher up. There's a lot less of a frictional force between you and the hurricane. In fact, you were the frictional force, and you saw that firsthand. Kind of same thing here to your west, where the storm is coming from, at 3,000, 4,000 feet elevation. We don't have those elevations near Nashville or Huntsville or anything like that. So the wind's going to be ripping, nothing to stop it. The first thing it's going to hit is the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. So we could see a high wind threat. Now, I'm not expecting wind gusts of 100 miles an hour or anything, but high wind gusts definitely could be a concern with that. Yeah, I see flashbacks there at the bottom now. Julie says, I have PTSD from tornadoes during Milton, so scary. Yeah, and that was a bit of a freak anomaly as well. That's a great example of when tornadoes and hurricanes kind of come together a little bit, something that can very much happen. All right. What about Tennessee around Nashville? Yeah, Nashville, I think, could be in the trouble zone on Saturday. All right, so let's time it out now, and then we'll get more nitty gritty on the questions. We'll start analyzing soundings and stuff here next up. So here's how it starts. This is tomorrow afternoon on Friday. We've got a strong low pressure, 974 millibars. I mean, folks, that's the strength of like a Category 2 hurricane, okay? So imagine a Category 2 hurricane over land in terms of energy. Now, that doesn't mean that, we're going to see a Category 2 hurricane conditions over Oklahoma, although it will be very windy, gusting potentially near hurricane strength at times in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle. That's a whole nother storyline with this storm system. But the wind energy and the spin and all that you get with a hurricane, imagine that right here over Kansas. And then what happens is it starts moving, it hits that instability, and we're going to get a very feisty line of storms tomorrow, Friday, in this circled region. Now, no matter what, we're going to see severe weather in Iowa and Missouri tomorrow. You start getting south towards Arkansas. That's where we have some more question marks, and I'll tell you why that is when we look at the soundings. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive into some of that. So here's the latest NAM model, and you can see this is tomorrow about noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock time frame, Central Time. Not a lot happening, and then you go a little bit further into time and watch the storms explode. Brady, I'll tell you, I honestly can't really remember many times I've seen a bow echo on some of the models this this impressive looking right at this frame.
Yeah, it's a high impact setup here. Maybe a cold core tornado setup, possibly too associated with this, Gerald. We can maybe talk about that a little bit more. Um, there's still some uncertainty about that aspect, but uh, there's there's no doubt the wind potential with this. It's what driving the moderate risk, as we mentioned earlier. High impact wind, regardless of tornado potential.
Yeah, definitely, and we can definitely do that. So, in fact, let's go ahead right now and take a sounding. So this is the part where we get kind of fun into the meteorology. If we kind of do a little sounding here over northern Missouri, and let's look at some of the factors going into this. All right, so you're in northern Missouri. You know severe weather's coming tomorrow, but you're wondering, Gerald, what kind of severe weather are we getting? So there's two kind of separate boxes you look at when you take a look at a sounding. You've got this box over here. This is what we call a hodograph. This shows us the wind energy in the atmosphere. And then over on the left, we call this a skew-T log P diagram. And this is what we use to look at thermodynamics. So I get that they're both kind of messy looking things here and a lot's going on, but I'll try my best to kind of explain it here. So let's start with the hodograph. I already told you we're going to get a lot of wind energy with this. And that's what this shows. So without trying to explain the hodograph too much, basically, basic meteorology is this. I'll draw a little squiggly line here. If you see a hodograph that looks like the one I just drew, that generally means that you're going to get some sort of multi-cell storms, and you can see some severe weather. If you get a hodograph that kind of looks like this instead, and it's just kind of a squiggly line that just hangs over itself, that suggests that given enough instability, you could see single cells, or just, kind of ordinary afternoon pop-up thunderstorms. Once you start getting hodographs that look a little bit more like this one, and they get tall and curvy, that suggests you could get more of a supercellular type storm mode, and that's what is being suggested tomorrow. So storm relative helicity values not off the charts on this sounding at this point in time. Again, this is northern Missouri tomorrow afternoon, around 200 or so. Is the value there on the storm relative helicity. And if you don't know what that is, basically it's this area. It's the integral, or just the area between these lines on the map. And that kind of tells us the general amount of spin. Now, the other side is the side that shows us instability. That shows us where we've got thunderstorm fuel or anything along those lines. The red line you see right here, this is our temperature line, and basically to find out your temperature, you got to look at the bottom here. So you see 0. This is in Celsius. As meteorologists and scientists, we always use Celsius or Kelvin because the rest of the world does that, and the United States is fancy and uses Fahrenheit and things like that. But we use Celsius. So 0 is 0 degrees Celsius following these lines. So that one is 0 degrees. That's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This one is 10 degrees Celsius. This one is 20 degrees Celsius. This one is 30. And then you kind of see at the surface here, it says 75F. That's the surface temperature. That's 75 degrees Fahrenheit. 53F on the green side is our dew point value, or our surface moisture value of about 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So the first thing that immediately jumps out to me for this sounding in the thermodynamic side is the lack of surface moisture. We're running 53 degrees Fahrenheit dew point. That's pretty low, and that's not super high and not something that screams severe weather. And you're wondering, well, why? Why is that? Well, it all comes back to this. It's this LCL value on this side. So LCL stands for lifted condensation level. That one's easy to explain. Basically, when you look up on an average day and you see the bottom of a cloud on, let's say, a fair weather cumulus day or an afternoon day when a thunderstorm begins to form, the bottom of that cloud, that's your LCL. It's basically whenever these particles, or these we'll go with particles, I guess, rise whenever they begin to condensate and become a cloud. That's what that is. Now, the higher that is, the less instability there is, the less thunderstorm fuel, the less CAPE there is in the atmosphere. The lower it is, generally speaking, the more CAPE we have. Because it's pretty high, our CAPE values are only about 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. And that's going to be one of the limiting factors here with this line of storms. A ton of wind energy. The instability is maybe a little bit more of a question mark. So you can kind of see that works through the region. And then as for the tornado threat, I think it gets a little bit higher south of there. And you're wondering why. Well, let's take a sounding down towards St. Louis, or just south of St. Louis. I think we had a question. The timing in this area. We do another box sounding as well, just so we're not getting as much contamination here. Let's see if that got rid of it. That's good enough. So the timing here, this is, what time did I click here, Brady? This is what, like 3Z, I think? Something like that.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it should say in the sounding. I'm just kind of blanking right now.
Yep, 3Z.
Valid 3Z.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. So this is the evening. This is, I guess, about 10 p.m. or so in St. Louis, something like that.
Yeah, roughly. Sorry, I'm not the greatest Central Time converter. I'm used to Eastern Standard.
Right. Yeah. So this will be about 10 p.m. So south of St. Louis is when the line of storms can move through. This one is a much more potent looking sounding. This one is a lot higher up in the threshold of problems, and you can immediately see here in the bottom right, you see where it says PSBL-HAZ type. That stands for possible hazard type. Basically, the model here is saying that all the ingredients that it's analyzes is saying we could see a PDS tour, or just basically a strong tornado. And one of the big reasons is this right here. You see this loop in the photograph? I mean, that's about as picture perfect of a supercellular look as you can get in the wind side of things. And again, if we go back to our SRH values, you see this column right here. I have my notes pulled up from class actually right next to me. And I'll go ahead and go through some of the numbers with you on a storm relative helicity. You can see I've got a little laptop pulled up here. All right, so let's do a little homework session in the chat. I want everyone to tell me, what do you think about what SRH value do you think supercells become probable? About what number do you think supercells become higher than a 50% likelihood of happening? And again, right here, these are SRH values of about 500 to 600. So everyone in the chat, go ahead and make your guess what number you think, and then we'll do an answer and see if you're right or not. And then Brady, you'll even get to guess. All right, you'll be the one to guess first.
I'm ready.
All right, we've got no clue. Okay, that's good. That's not bad. That's not bad. All right, 78. All right, 2000, 2000 plus. All right, guessing is fine. Someone says 200. We got 400. We got 1000. Going to school with Gerald. Yep. Classes in session. All right, we got 900. 50. All right. All right, so once you hit about 100 storm relative helicity, that's whenever supercells become possible. So that's not a high likelihood, but 100 is when things begin to get interesting. Once you hit about 200, it becomes probable that we will see supercells. So we're sitting at about 500 to 600 here. So you get the idea. That's pretty insane. That's a ton of spin in the atmosphere. And in fact, if you look at the 50th percentile, what is the average SRH value for a tornadic storm? It's usually about 180 from 0 to 3 kilometers. So you get 500, 600. I mean, that is off the charts levels of spin here, folks. So that is really, truly just insane stuff. And then you go to the other side and you notice our LCL is significantly lower on this sounding than the previous sounding. And that is, going to lead to probably a little bit more cape in the sounding. Now, it's relatively skinny cape, but also relatively thick cape, I would say. Not well, that kind of contradicts itself. I'm going to say tall, not thick. It's a kind of skinny and tall cape in here. But that would be enough with this sort of wind profile to absolutely produce a tornado and potentially a strong tornado. In fact, if you look at the STP values down here, this is down in the bottom. Storm prediction, or not storm prediction center, sorry, significant tornado parameter. There's two options. There's the SYN option and the fixed option. The SYN option takes into account whether storms will even form in the first place, and then the fixed option says just in general what it'll be. That's sitting at about 4 to 6. And that's also pretty high. Anything above about a 1 gets your attention. Once you get above about 2 or 3, things get kind of a little more serious. This is about double that. So, in fact, Brady, I just realized I forgot to even let you guess. So, oops, you can guess on the next parameter. Did you want to talk a little bit about this sounding, though, Brady, and what your thoughts are? Kind of, this is again your Cape Girardeau tomorrow evening in Missouri.
Yeah, I think I'll mention three things and you can kind of elaborate them on a little bit more. I think the EML, the elevated mix layer, stands out significantly. I think also if you look at the wind barbs, the change in direction, it's a simple thing anybody can look at. The change in direction of the winds with height is what stands out. And then the hodograph, the waviness and the lengthiness, I guess is how I would describe it. That certainly, those are the three things I think that really stand out, that you oftentimes associated with the potential for big time tornadoes.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is about a perfect photograph. You can't get a much better looking photograph than this one. Another thing to note is the storm motion on this. These are motions of about 60 knots. So, I mean, these things are booking it at interstate speeds tomorrow. That's a super strong storm. So not one that you want to be caught in the way of. And then, like Brady mentioned, I think a very good point. If this one over here doesn't make any sense, these wind barbs might make a little bit more sense. Here at the surface, they're blowing that way, and then they're blowing this way, and then they're blowing that way. So you've got this kind of clockwise motion with it, or those veering winds, also indicative of severe weather. So a feisty looking sounding there, definitely one that very much could produce severe weather tomorrow. And I think that's where, if I had to pick somewhere that's probably the most likely to get significant, or at least the tornado threat would probably be a little bit further south. So if I had to draw my own maps here, and obviously I'm not from the Storm Prediction Center, so but I'm also allowed to draw on a screen. So I think up here into this region of Iowa and Kansas, I guess portions of Kansas and then Missouri, and up into Illinois, this would be the biggest wind threat up here. I would say this is where we get a very strong straight line winds. Get a little bit further south, though, down here into St. Louis, southern Illinois, portions of western Kentucky tomorrow night, really past sunset. That's where I'm watching for a tornado threat in this region, could be higher end. So kind of a multi-mode threat here. And then you keep on going, and eventually everything gets a little bit more kind of linear with this line of storms. And again, just a very strong straight line wind threat anytime you get this sort of bow echo look. And just out of curiosity, let's also take a sounding over south central Illinois. This would be right around midnight tomorrow and see what this looks like. That is crazy and contaminated, so let's maybe try a little bit different. All right, come on, you can do it. All right, that looks a little bit better. So same thing here, folks. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of wind energy. You get a little bit less CAPE in here. So our CAPE values hovering around 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram. That's not a ton of CAPE. It's also, though, not too little for severe weather. In fact, let me pull that up as well. Let's do another little guess. What does everyone think the 50th percentile? So if you look at a ton of tornadoes that happen, what do you think the average CAPE value is for those tornadoes on that day? Well, let's go ahead and get those answers, and then Brady, I'll let you guess too, and then I'll give the answer on what it actually is. So everyone go ahead, let me know. What do you think the average CAPE value is on a day with a big tornado? Or not a big tornado, just a tornado in general. I think this one might be a little bit of an easier one to guess, because I think we talk about CAPE a little bit more on the channel, and probably just something you hear about more often. All right, Joshua says 1,500. All right, first guess is in. 400. Okay. 1,000. These are good guesses. 2,000. I like the units there. Joules per kilogram. That is good. And by the way, joules is a measure of work, and that's what CAPE is. It's measuring the work the atmosphere is doing to lift something. Anytime you lift something in physics, that is a function of work. I like the units there. 2,000 joules per kilogram. We've got 900, 1,000, 777. I like that that's oddly specific. Got a 500, 1,000. All right, Brady, you wanna give your guess? What do you think the number is on the 50th percentile? I will add, this study was done in 1992, so it's it's been a while, but the study it's still helpful. What's your
I really
50th
like that.
percentile?
What was it? That 5 billion guess. I don't know. That was pretty.
Yeah,
I thought
5
that was a
billion.
pretty
That
good
could
one.
be
But
it. That could be it. Yeah.
that could be it. Let's see. I think it would be closer to 1,000 if I had to guess off the top of the dome. That's what I would guess.
All right, so a study done in 1992, and by the way, this is straight from my notes, so I appreciate this set of notes in front of me. But then again, when you pay as much as I do in tuition, you deserve a set of lecture notes, don't you? So this is a study done actually in 1998 by Rasmussen and Blanchard, and they came up. They did a whole bunch of case studies, and a lot of these values and numbers I'm giving you are from that study. 1,314 joules per kilogram was the average, or the 50th percentile CAPE. On days with tornadoes. Now, the lowest 10th percentile, this is a fun little stat. I think Brady, you want to guess what the 10th percentile on the low end was for CAPE on those days with tornadoes?
Oof. Maybe 4 to 500 ish, maybe.
66 was the CAPE.
Wow,
So
that's
it goes to
that's
show,
impressive.
folks. Yeah, everyone always gets caught up, and if you go on Twitter and you look at it, everyone's like, "Oh, look at these CAPE values," and the old James Spann meme. "Oh, look at the STP," or whatever. There's no single ingredient that tells us if a tornado is going to happen. So, everyone says, "Oh, it's CAPE. If CAPE isn't 3,000, we're not getting tornadoes." The average CAPE for a tornado is about 1,300, and on some days it's as low as double digits. We're talking 50 or 60. So, that is something to definitely keep in mind here with this. And anytime you get this much wind energy, you do not need a lot of CAPE to get things going. So definitely, I just think something very important to note. And there's other things that we can also look at here. I'm trying to find if we have our Helicity map on here. I don't quite think so. So we'll pull that up separately. But yeah, so that's a sounding from Southern Illinois for tomorrow night during the overnight hours. And then you go further ahead, and the things kind of fall apart a little bit during the morning hours, and you see the big old blizzard on behind it, which we're not really talking too much about. But if anyone's watching from that area that could see the winter weather side of this, let us know, and we can maybe discuss it a little bit, but mainly talking severe weather here. All right, so let's do some more fun meteorology and some math here, which not that the math is fun, but I'll gaslight myself into saying it is, so I maybe don't like it quite as much. And we'll move this ahead. So if we go back, actually, Brady, I want to look at the threat for tomorrow again. And I want everyone to kind of tell me if they're noticing anything that's kind of jumping out here that's maybe a little strange. So down here into the next area we're going to look at, we're kind of looking in this area. we've got a level 3 out of 5 in the orange, a level 2 out of 5 in the yellow, and a level 1 out of 5 in the marginal. So that's that area. We look at the tornado threat for tomorrow. Again, high there into areas I talked about through Missouri and Illinois. Also stretches further down south. Notice that. But if I show you the NAM model for tomorrow, kind of watch what happens. So this is tomorrow afternoon. This is about sunset. And then this is into the overnight hours. And then everything after that becomes Saturday. So I want everyone to take a couple guesses. What is jumping out to you that's a little strange? What's not quite matching up between the two? And then Brady, I think you'll probably, I'll let you give a guess. I think you'll probably have a pretty good one. So everyone, what kind of isn't matching between this map? So this is tomorrow evening when the Storm Prediction Center has, a pretty high threat down here into this region. Again, this is what they're going with for a tornado threat. And then this is what the NAM shows. So tell me what you think might not quite be lining up here. Brady, I like this. I like this little answer Q&A thing. This is fun. What do you think?
I think these people feel like they're back in school, Gerald, but hopefully the fun
I
kind.
know.
I this is a meteorology dream right here.
I know.
101.
I'm giving everyone a free meteorology degree.
Q&A portion. I know.
I
It's
think
unbelievable.
the least everyone can do is go ahead and like the stream, probably, for this free
You
meteorology
know what,
information.
Gerald, too, while people type their answers, you made a great point that I talk about often on my channel for severe weather as well, is that it's almost like, if give an analogy, like a team, like there's not one player that's gonna win you a champ, but you need like a whole team of people. Like there's a lot of different factors that go to play together. And you have, for football, like there's 11 different guys on the field. They all need to do their part. And sometimes one does more than the other in certain games, right? And they all kind of play their part. And there's not one factor that's the sole thing and the reason why it may or may not happen always. And I think they all play a combination together. So just to kind of go off what you were saying there last time, that's what makes tornado forecasting so complicated. And oftentimes we're looking at it after, not beforehand, on
Yeah,
probability of
there's plenty of times where we're like, what did we miss instead of what's coming?
yeah,
um,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So it looks like a lot of y'all are definitely onto the right thing here. So basically, what's off is there's nothing down here. You just don't see any convection. Now I have not checked the HER model, so let's look at a different model. This is the high resolution rapid refresh for tomorrow at the same time frame and see what it shows. So definitely a little bit more convection, but not quite. Still, really not quite as much. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. Well, why are we running into this kind of difference between the SPC outlook and maybe some of the models? So if we take a sounding here over, well, again, if we go back to their outlook, they show northern Mississippi here, kind of in one of the bullseyes for severe weather. So let's do a little sounding here. This is tomorrow evening in that region, and let's see if we can kind of pick apart what maybe might be happening. All right, so the kind of first thing that jumps out, and I'll go ahead and explain my thoughts on this. Now, no matter what, we've still got the wind energy, not maybe quite as high as Missouri and Illinois, but we've still got the turning of the height. We've still got some CAPE. We've still got, 1,000 or something joules per kilogram. But the value that you're not quite maybe seeing, and this is something people never talk about because it's a buzzkill in severe weather, it's the number next to CAPE, CCINH. That's convective inhibition. Basically, that is the opposite of CAPE. CAPE is rising motion. Sin is kind of what is the opposite of that. It wants to keep convection suppressed. So tomorrow, I think, is going to be a boom or bust type event down here into portions of Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, areas further south. Basically, what's happening is, again, the atmosphere, you're trying to break through a level here of a bit of a cap or a capping inversion. Basically, the air parcel is just not able to get up past that, and nothing even happens. Another thing that is worth mentioning here is we've got a pretty good mixed layer here of dry air, and that can often suppress convection as well. Basically, what happens, in fact, you know what? Let's see if we can give you a real life example of this. So you'll see the maps changing around here. That could work. Let's see if we have another has cam that maybe has a little bit of a different view. It's starting to get a little dark out here in some of these places. Sorry, I'm looking for a real life example. That's pretty. Oh, that's probably a nice sunset coming in Arkansas. These has cams should maybe do it. Yeah, okay, perfect. This will work. So this is over northern Alabama. By the way, check out the full moon. Everyone go ahead and give a like for the full moon. And let me know who's staying up at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. to see the lunar eclipse tonight. Brady, how about you? Are you staying up for the eclipse?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm not sure cloud cover is going to be close here, so it'll be a close call, but I'll be peeping the sky, giving it a look.
Yeah, should be good. Give it a look. Might as well. So there's your full moon. That's off topic. But look at this cumulus cloud over the right. So this is a thunderstorm over Alabama right now. You see the rising motion in here. You see these areas of updrafts going on. Well, you also see how they're kind of bubbly in here on the sides of the storm. This is entrainment, is what we call it. So basically, the clouds are kind of bubbling up and looping around like this. And what happens when you get a layer of very dry air is basically it rises up and it pulls that dry air into the storm. And, excuse me, that begins to kind of evaporate the water a little bit. And I think the common misconception is, oh, it evaporates the water so the cloud disappears. Not quite. What happens is it evaporates the water. That evaporation causes a cooling process. And what happens is you get that cooler air that wants to sink. So then that comes back down. We call that water loading, entrainment. There's a couple different types of ways it can happen. But if you get too much dry air in the mid levels, oftentimes that can kind of counteract these updrafts and kill off the storms a little bit. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of it right here with this storm, but maybe a little bit. Again, the storm not shooting all the way up to its equilibrium level. So maybe a little bit of that ongoing even here as well. But definitely something to note in the soundings for portions or areas kind of further south tomorrow. You can see that complex of storms that it was just looking at down here just north of Birmingham with some lightning ongoing. Looks like even a storm up into Kentucky. So yeah, already seeing some active weather today, but it's a little off topic. All right. So again, kind of a boomer bust further south tomorrow. If we do get storms that could produce tornadoes, wind energy still off the charts and all, but a little less so on the fact of if the storm even forms. Further north, I mean, this is even a bigger tornado threat, I would imagine, over the St. Louis metro tomorrow evening on in this model. So definitely, again, I think Missouri, Southern Illinois is the place to be for tornadoes for your Friday, and then we'll get into Saturday. So any final thoughts on Friday, Brady, before we move on to Saturday?
A couple things. I mean, pretty eerie. Lunar eclipse the night before a multi-day severe weather outbreak. That's in the 2025 script right there, isn't it, Gerald? I mean, that's perfect timing. And then second, we did get a lot of requests for Nashville, so I think we do owe it. We had a good amount of requests for Nashville, so if you don't mind taking a Nashville sounding before we move on to Saturday, I think we would make a lot of people in the chat happy. We had at least several people request a Nashville sounding, so.
And we can do that. We are specialists in answering questions. So this is what time did I even click? This is 7Z. So this is well into the overnight on Friday. So you could argue it's even Saturday threat. It's kind of maybe a 1-2 punch in Nashville. We'll see. All right. So you know what, Brady? I'm gonna hand it to you. What do you immediately notice in this sounding? What's kind of your thoughts on the threat? I think I've done a lot of talking tonight. So what do you got?
The screen here is Discord's a little bit quality, but
I can answer
first
things if you got any questions.
I can do it though. It's fine. I can see well enough. I still got 2020 left, I think.
Nice.
But what stands out here again, notice we definitely still have that, or as Gerald was describing it, wind energy. Definitely still have that present, as you can see in the photograph up top here. But at the moment, I don't see a ton of convective available potential energies, instability, in other words. And I also notice a pretty strong cap at the same time, even though we still have 64 over 57 temperature over dew point. And we do have some veering of the winds throughout height. So theoretically, some isolated, maybe tornado potential can't be ruled out as that line of storms move closer. But to me, this looks like more of a straight line wind threat potential, Gerald. I don't know about you, but I would say the tornado risk would be lower for Nashville come tomorrow night.
Yeah, I agree. Now, it's funny because it's one of those things where you look at it here and you're like, all right, well, we've got these kind of, then you take the sounding, and again, it's just a lot less exciting. Yeah, notice first thing I'm immediately noticing is a pretty big um, kind of lack of ability to probably push through this sin. I mean, that's a lot of convective inhibition at the surface. So these storms might become a little bit more elevated, meaning you're going to lower the tornado threat. Now, D-Cape, it's another thing we look, is pretty high here. And if you don't know what D-Cape is, also I should move the screen so people can see it. D-Cape is the opposite of Cape. So this is downdraft Cape, and it's hovering at about 1,000 joules per kilogram. That's a lot of D-Cape, folks. So that would be more than enough to definitely bring some of that wind down to the surface. So I definitely think more of a straight line wind threat for these storms, maybe even a little bit of small hail by the time we get to the overnight hours. If you're going to get a tornado threat, it's probably going to be more when the storms first form back out into the Memphis area and Tupelo more than Nashville. And then this kind of works on through and we get to Saturday. All right, so everyone remind us in the chat where you're watching from if you're in kind of the Saturday threat area, and we'll go back to the original map from the Storm Prediction Center. So let us know again, are you in this threat area for Saturday, or if you're in a different area? And I'd love to, again, be reminded of where everyone is watching from. All right, just checking all the chats here. Well, it looks like a good amount of people here in the threat area for Saturday. And someone actually made a pretty good point here with the time change. So yeah, this we're gonna get an extra hour of sunlight out of this thing. So that will definitely, as a storm chaser, make this a little bit easier. I'm a fan of that time change. But also that's an extra hour of kind of instability for the storms to work with, and luckily an extra hour for us to see the storms as well. Obviously, it's not good when you can't see what's coming towards you.
Gerald,
also,
I'll
go ahead. Yeah.
Gerald, if you don't mind too, we didn't talk about too much the fact that it is a nocturnal tornado threat for tomorrow night as well in the fast storm motion. So some of these storms may be tornado warned late, possibly, and you may not have a lot of lead time with the fast storm motion and being nighttime. So having a plan in place to execute beforehand, I would say, would be pretty important for those at the risk for tornadoes tomorrow night.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point. Is that tomorrow will be an evening threat. Also, sorry again, my sinuses are starting to get the best of me here a little bit. But have a way to get warnings, and have a way that warning will wake you up, I think, is the key with this sort of thing. Also, if you live in a not so sturdy structure, maybe a mobile home or something, and if you have family in something a little more sturdier, has a basement or a storm cellar or something like that, might not be a bad idea Friday night in Missouri and Illinois, especially, but that is something definitely to watch. And then Saturday could be a bit of a nocturnal threat as well. But that's a very good point, Brady. Appreciate you mentioning that. So, again, this is the Saturday threat. We talked about it. We've got that moderate risk. Not something you see very often at day 3. And somebody posted earlier, the last time we had a day 3 moderate ended up having like 60 tornadoes and like 100-something wind damage reports. So, not something to write off by any means at all. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at it. What is this going to look like potentially? And I'm actually going to do something a little bit different here. So let me pull something up. And again, if you haven't already liked the stream and subscribed and hit the bell for the latest notifications, do that. I'm going to pull up a different, we're going to use tropical tidbits for this because it'll zoom out a little bit more, and then we'll take the soundings on pivotal weather. So we're going to mix it up just a little bit. All right, so again, we're going to be looking at the NAM model. The HER's not quite in range, unfortunately, for the event. I think it started running, though, maybe, Brady, but it's going to take a while to get to where we need it to be. So we're going to have
that extra hour of models now. It's we're an hour behind.
A little annoying, but it's okay. I think it's worth the extra hour of daylight. All right, so here we go. And again, luckily with this page, you can see the time above my head. That's in Eastern Standard Time. So here's 7 a.m. Saturday on this model. And this is kind of what you're seeing here is the leftover from Friday. So you see this kind of broken line of storms all the way down to Mississippi and Alabama. That's the leftovers from the Friday storm. And again, like I said earlier, a very important point to make here is there are actually two separate storms. The Saturday storm and the Friday storm are not really the same low pressure system. So this is the leftover of the first low pressure. And arguably, that could help us a little bit, or rephrase that, kind of hurt us a little bit. I know generally when you have storms in the morning, you think, all right, that'll help. But what this could do is actually put a little bit of a cap in place in the morning and give time for the atmosphere to juice back up a little bit before the afternoon here. You see that new surface low begins to develop and a new area of storms developing with it here by the time we get into Saturday afternoon on the model. And then as we go further ahead into time, this is when things get a little bit more serious. So this initial batch you're seeing here, this is the warm front beginning to advect northward. So our warm sector is still pretty far south during the early morning of Saturday, at least on this model. Again, I'll tell you right now, it's going to change a little bit. And this is one of the toughest parts is forecasting exactly what radar is going to look like on the day of the event, especially when you're still 48 hours in advance, or I guess maybe more like 36 hours. But keep it going. You can see that warm front lifts northward, and with it, the precipitation. And pause it here, 5 p.m. This is 5 p.m. Saturday, March 15th, and you can see very strong low pressure and that warm sector becoming a lot bigger and incorporating more areas of Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and even down into the bayous of Louisiana. And if we go ahead and take a sounding here, I'm going to switch pages. Let me go back to Pivotal to take the sounding, just because it's going to look a little bit cleaner. So let me do that. And Brady, you can talk a little bit while I do this behind the scenes stuff if you'd like.
Oh, you got it. Keep going. You're rocking strong here. I'm enjoying Gerald's school session today, to be honest. So
Class is in session. Love it. All right, so here we go. All right, so here's the sounding. Pulled it up. This is again from the NAM. This I took over northern Mississippi, northern Alabama-ish at this time frame. So again, if we go back and look at what radar looks like at this time frame, again, I took the sounding right into this region, kind of in the warm sector. So what does it look like? Well, again, looks pretty volatile. We talked about SRH earlier. I mean, this is basically an identical storm relative helicity map or a hodograph from Friday and kind of the highest areas that we talked about. So a ton of spin in the atmosphere, and with that, storm relative helicity values are sitting between 5 and 600. Again, that's kind of off the charts here. Convective inhibition, much lower. So you can see this time a lot higher likelihood we're going to get storms. Now, generally speaking, you want a little bit of sin. If you get no sin, then you get what we kind of call crapvection, and basically everything explodes in the atmosphere, and then these storms aren't very discrete, and their inflows can get messed up and things like that. So you generally probably want a little bit more like 25, 50. This is basically none, maybe like 10 at the in the mid levels. But maybe a little bit. I see a little bit of a cap right here, so maybe that would help to suppress things just a little bit. But Cape values hovering between about right around 2,000 joules per kilogram. A little less than that maybe, but generally I would argue Cape ends up a little bit higher than what the models project. Storm or significant tornado parameters, again, sitting between about 5 and 6. That's plenty high enough. Let's see if we have our lifted index value on here. Might be hidden in the sounding somewhere. There's so many different numbers. It can be a little difficult to find it. Might be hiding from me. I don't know. Sorry, it's not that important of a sounding anyway, or not that important of a metric. But yeah, a ton of Cape, ton of wind shear. Again, it's just kind of off the chart looking sounding. Brady, anything that jumps out to you on this sounding besides the fact that it's insane?
yeah, I mean that's a anytime, like I said, you see waviness and you start seeing, if you want to get, kid terminology, the loop-de-loops in the in our photographs to sound very kid-like, but it's true. Long, wavy, loopy photographs are very suggestive. And also, I look at the storm motion, how fast. I mean, long track, violent tornado potential. Again, like we talked about, I want to, before going all the way in, you want to, in exact specific details. We still noted earlier, 500 millibar setup, that some changes are still possible in the specifics, but There's a lot to suggest that. Yes, there's going to be strong wind potential at a minimum, but there's very likely the potential here for violent, strong tornadoes with potential for long track, meaning being on the ground for more than just a few seconds, right? We're talking, possibly several minutes, maybe longer potential for some of these tornadoes to be on the ground and doing significant damage. So that is the potential we look at here. And again, a lot of people think you need like 4 or 5,000, like you want to max out all the parameters. No, that's not necessarily true. That is plenty of instability necessary there. And there's plenty of strong, plenty of strong wind energy, as I like how Gerald's been calling it there as well. And I mean, that is very, that's a very concerning, I guess, the term that's been trending on Twitter lately, sounding for tornado potential.
Do you know how that even started? Like, who started that one?
I don't know. I don't know. Someone in the Midwest it had to have been. We have a lot of memers out there in the if I had to take a guess.
Right. And then everyone obviously jumping at this big old PDS tour again. This definitely would be a sounding that could produce a significant tornado, meaning, you know, EF 2 or 3 plus. Also, another not fun thing, or I guess fun for me because I'm a nerd and a scientist. But down here at the bottom, this Whisker box plot does a good job of showing what STP values, generally speaking, can produce what type of tornado. So this is effective layer STP with SYN. So there's two different ways that we can calculate the significant tornado parameter. There's the fixed layer, and that doesn't take into account this SYN box down here that I talked about earlier. And then we can also take it into account with SYN. Generally, with SYN is kind of the new kid on the block. It's one of the newer methods that has been developed. Actually, funnily enough, one of my professors helped to develop the method. One of her graduate students kind of worked hand in hand to do that. So anytime, we're running a value of about 5.4. So and I know this is very small down here. In fact, you know what? Maybe I could zoom in on it. Let's see. Is that something I could? Let's see. If I zoom in. Yeah, there. Screen blow up, but yeah, I can do it this way. Oop, there we go. All right, so again, kind of looking at this plot value. Oh, and then I just immediately got rid of it. Wait for it. We're going to fix this. We're going to build back better. All right. There we go. All right, you can kind of see my epic pin there. That's okay. All right, so again, right here, what you're seeing, this is R value, that red line. And if you look at the whisker and box plot, and again, let me move this out of the way as well, so you don't have to look at that. There we go. Now we can all see it, right? Yeah, this is basically right in the median of what produces EF4 plus tornadoes. So not to say that that's going to happen, but historically speaking, if this sounding were to be correct, this is right at the 50th percentile of EF4 tornadoes. This is at the higher percentile of EF3, meaning it's more likely to produce at least an EF3, an EF2, and then generally speaking, with numbers this high, you're going to get an EF2 or greater, or a significant tornado, as we call it. So just kind of an interesting little tidbit there. So, yeah. All right, let's go back to the model and keep analyzing it. So again, obviously you see things blow up. I think the big question, Brady, right now is storm mode on Saturday. Do we get this kind of in this warm sector? Do we get any like single supercells to develop, or is this kind of more of a line of storms? I think that's going to be something we definitely need to watch for, and will play a big role in the forecast. Then I think either way, by the overnight of Saturday, this likely congeals into a bit more of a line of storms, and that's something to watch. But if you're anywhere within this warm sector on Saturday, right into this region, that's where we're going to have the highest threat for supercells and discrete supercells potentially to develop. That would include, I would say, Nashville, Birmingham, really all of Alabama, much of Mississippi, down towards New Orleans. Areas like that is where I would be watching for the highest threat level on Saturday. And yeah, Brady, thoughts on all that? Oh, might have lost Brady actually. Let's see. Actually, I might have just lost my sound. Brady, you still there? I think. All right, let me fix this with Brady, everybody, and then we'll get back. All right. Can you hear me, Brady?
I got you.
All right, cool. Sorry about that, everyone. Just had a slight hiccup. Let me get you back to the screen sharing. All right. So anyway, Brady, I was just kind of talking about Saturday in that warm sector and the importance of the difference whether we're going to get supercells in a discrete way or if we're going to get more of a line of storms. I think that's something very important. But I think really anywhere within this warm sector is where we need to watch for that potential of maybe a couple supercells to be strong and produce significant tornadoes.
Indeed, yeah, and it's gonna storm mode where, like we talked about, is gonna make a huge difference on the exact specific details. Like we talked about, severe weather is very challenging to forecast those specific details, but we just don't know quite yet. So we're just gonna have to be patient here, and so don't be surprised if we don't see, a high risk, upgrade tonight. Don't be surprised if we don't see it. I know a lot of people are expecting it, maybe, but there's just maybe still some uncertainty on storm mode to define whether or not we see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, by the way, if y'all hear background noise, my roommate is in the kitchen cooking, and he can be a little loud when he cooks. So I don't know what's up with that, but anyway,
You sound fine.
so
Kid.
yeah,
Don't worry.
what'd you say?
You sound fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, if you hear any like laughing like a hyena or something, that's what that is. So he gets very excited when he cooks. So yeah, this is as far out as the NAM goes, though. Everybody is here, and you can still see kind of just those clusters of storms. I mean, the NAM shows kind of a discrete supercell threat, really even into the overnight of Saturday into Sunday through Alabama. The timing again is going to be something we need to watch. Even gets that supercell threat even into like Atlanta. Um, by the time we get towards the again late overnight of Saturday into the early morning hours of Sunday. And I do want to zoom out a little bit and for our friends up north into Ohio and kind of Pennsylvania and areas like that that are kind of in the threat area. So you can see here it comes. I think it's more of a Saturday night thing, but eventually by the time we get past sunset, you end up in the warm sector. This is kind of the warm sector right into here. So you get there eventually in that region, and that's when you could see that severe threat there. Maybe even a tornado or two up that far north, but probably more of a wind threat and maybe even a bit of a hail threat. Definitely not probably a significant tornado threat like we're going to see further south into Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And folks, that's as far out as our mesoscale models go. So yeah, they don't go into Sunday. I think we should briefly talk about Sunday, though. I know a lot of people here watching are from areas that Sunday could be a concern. So let me pull that up and let me go. And Brady, if there are any questions, feel free to answer them in the chat while I kind of find a couple maps to pull up.
Like one, can we see the risk again on Nashville for Saturday again? Again, I don't think Nashville is the highest area of concern potentially for severe weather out of this, but yes, yes, Nashville is in play for Saturday as well for severe weather potential. Um, exact specific details though, are to TBD, I would say, for that. Gwen says she has all of her family in Cincinnati, so hopefully your family stays safe there. Gwen in Cincinnati says, Metro list says high winds for South and Virginia. Yes, possibly on Sunday. That is certainly possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think winds will be a concern. In fact, let me actually, um, while we still have some people here, let me pull up the wind map for the storm because I do think that'll be something to mention. Then we'll take a look at a couple soundings for Sunday and go from there. All right, so this is the wind map, and again, I'll move here. These are wind gusts, folks. Tomorrow night, I mean, check out over Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, we're talking gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour. That's pretty crazy stuff. Not something you see very often, obviously. And then as we go east, I think overnight Saturday, another burst of wind. Nashville, we talked about straight line wind. Yeah, I mean, check out the Euro shows winds gusting 60 to 70 miles an hour. And then that kind of pushes east. Sunday afternoon could be very breezy in the mid-Atlantic, including Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, up through New York State. And then eventually Brady could pull up your way by overnight Sunday into Monday here up into New England, and then kind of gets out of here. But again, folks in North Carolina, I know we had questions about the mountains there. If we kind of look at a local level here at North Carolina and Virginia, I know I got a lot of people in that area anyway. So look at the wind gusts in here. This is Sunday afternoon. Let me back it up. This is the overnight. So, I mean, the ridge tops here, they're going to be bumping. I mean, we're talking 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts, not out of the question at all, I think, with that line of storms as it works through here during the kind of overnight Saturday into Sunday morning into eastern Tennessee and the mountains of North Carolina. Definitely something to kind of monitor in that area for sure. And then if we go back over here, I wanted to show you this. This is the GFS model for Sunday. You can see kind of what it's looking like. This is about 2 p.m. So obviously a line of storms from really that threat area of Pennsylvania all the way down to the Carolinas, Georgia, and into the Big Bend of Florida. So the further east you are in these areas, kind of the Tidewater, Delmarva into eastern North Carolina and South Carolina, I think probably going to be the highest threat that day, especially kind of southeast Virginia, eastern North Carolina, the Delmarva, Tidewater region, I think would be the highest risk of severe weather on Sunday. I just think you're going to get the most instability overlapping with those wind ingredients. And if we take a look at a couple soundings, I'll show you this one. This is I forgot to change that over. Let me get that back to how it should be. And kind of zoom in a little bit. This is from the GFS model, and this is in kind of eastern North Carolina during the afternoon of Sunday. So let me see if I can get this in frame so it actually shows up properly. There we go. That should look somewhat okay. All right, so again, you can see the model immediately going with a marginal torque. So I think Sunday will be a lesser day no matter what. The big difference that jumps out is the wind profile. I don't think it's going to be quite as impressive on Sunday compared to Saturday. It's almost like a miniature version of Saturday. It's kind of got that supercellular look, just at a smaller level. So we've got SRH values a lot closer to reality of about 1 to 200. And I think that's going to be something to note. Also, another thing that's kind of on Sunday in that region is we've got this area of pretty not so steep lapse rates right where you want pretty steep lapse rates. So this could, prevent storms from blowing up. Now, some things that would support severe weather is we do have a pretty low LCO. We've got, definitely still enough wind shear and turning with heights for severe weather. Everything's kind of, it's watered down. Basically, Sunday is a watered down version of Saturday. So, Brady, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on this sound. Again, this is kind of eastern North Carolina on the Sunday time frame, at least for that region.
hmm I think we'll definitely see some changes in terms of the specifics, in the details upcoming, like we've mentioned. And so I'd say the tornado potential is still a little bit uncertain in regards to that. But I think regardless, we are looking at strong wind potential, even as you just showed earlier, not severe potential even, but also along with the severe weather, I think there'll definitely be a lot of or the Storm Prediction Center will likely have a wind-driven risk, if I had to take a guess, for that day 3 and day 2 risks upcoming.
Yeah, I definitely think wind will be a big concern. Now, you talked about things changing. Let me show you another sounding. This is from the European. This is actually up near DC. And you're looking at possible hazard type and you're seeing none. And you're like, all right, well, Gerald, why do I care? Then why are you showing me this? Well, look at this photograph. This is, again, a lot of wind shear, a ton of wind shear. And this is whenever you go from modelology to meteorology. If you're a modelologist, you're going to look at this and just immediately see possible hazard type and just throw the thing away and say, all right, nothing's happening on Sunday up in DC. Well, again, hold your horses, because the further north you get, the better this photograph is going to start to look. So that's why I think kind of the Tidewater area, maybe northeast North Carolina, could be a hot spot. Once you get that far north, you start getting more wind shear. And if you uptrend the thermodynamics at all here, I mean, if you go again, right now it's about 0 cape. If you just bump it up to 500 cape, I mean, that could be a pretty good tornado threat for the Mid Atlantic on Sunday. It's not going to take much. And like Brady said, we're 4 days away, 3 days away. Things are going to change. We get any slight uptrends and instability on Sunday, it could become a much bigger deal than maybe it looks right now. Again, just a ton of turning winds and wind speed and direction with height. So yeah, look at this photograph. Yeah, just like the song, right? So, what are kind of your thoughts on the changes in the models there, Brady, and what little changes could mean, big
Yeah, I think Sunday may be a case where we see Reed talk about the northern tip of the moisture tongue a lot of times. I think Sunday could be one of those days where, the best wind shear it will be farther north, and just where there's enough instability, that's where that tornado and moisture as well. That's where that tornado potential I think will be maximized. So potentially from from northern North Carolina into maybe even some southern parts of the Northeast. I wouldn't rule out, or whatever you consider like just DC, possibly can't even rule out Southeast Pennsylvania, South Jersey, Delmarva. I think there could be some potential up into there, maybe for some tornado potential.
Yeah, another thing that jumps out to me in this sounding that maybe not a lot of people in the plains would probably notice. See the equilibrium level here? That's pretty low. So this is starting to. I'm getting super shower vibes from this. Is what I'm getting. I'm getting some low topped, shallow supercells. I'm getting that vibe. Again, we've got the wind shear for it. You get just a little bit of instability. This could be a classic kind of super shower day in the Mid Atlantic on Sunday. That's something I'm going to be watching for in the models. All right. Yeah. So we went about an hour and a half, which honestly is about an hour longer than I thought we were going to go. So that's good. We got some time in here. Give a couple seconds for any questions, and then Brady, anything you want to add here as well. And then again, I'll give everyone about a minute or two to add their questions in the chat, and we'll answer what we see.
That are your buddy cooking right now? He's enjoying his dinner, Gerald.
Oh, he is. Yeah, he is. He's having a blast, and I was blowing my nose. So
Hopefully, he
that
cooks
was a.
for you. Hopefully, he cooks for you. You deserve it.
He does offer me food all the time. I would definitely give him that. It's funnily enough just always like right after I just eaten. So, but he actually goes to school for culinary arts. So I can't even get mad at him for cooking. It's kind of his job. I
Look
feel
at
like if
that.
he got mad at
Look
me
at that.
for looking at a weather map. So
Or storm chase.
yeah, right. No, we all get along pretty well. I am definitely I'm excited to chase this thing. If I chase in Alabama on Saturday, it'll be my first ever Dixie Alley chase. So
There we go.
I think that would be a lot of fun, and maybe I'll go live in Alabama, give everyone a little on the ground view of what it's like storm chasing in Dixie Alley. We'll see.
It's a little farther for me, but I think I'll probably be like
Right.
we talked about earlier. I'll probably be chasing Sunday. I think is when I'll be targeting because I am. For those that don't know, I'm from Massachusetts, so it's a little bit of a farther drive than Gerald from North Carolina. If I were to try to do that chase, but so hoping for maybe some interesting weather up here come Sunday.
Yeah. All right. So we had a couple questions come in. Are we supposed to get hail with this storm? I think the hail threat is relatively low with this one. Or not low, it's just lower than the wind and tornado threat. It's probably a better way to put it. I think those two are going to be the big things to worry about. We already had some hail today in Alabama and even into Tennessee and Kentucky, I believe. In fact, you can see on satellite loop right now, we've got kind of flare up. Funnily enough, kind of on the backside of the storm. It's kind of weird. It's in that convergence zone of the storms. These storms are, I don't know how they're really getting going. They're on the backside of almost like a deformation band of severe weather on the back end. But that's definitely where we have the cooler pocket of air, so that would make sense why we'd get hail back there. But is some hail definitely possible, especially if we get any supercells? There's going to be hail embedded in the line of storms itself. It's also March, so we generally get more hail in the earlier part of the spring when it's a little cooler out. It makes sense. It's ice falling from the sky after all. So good question. How's Tupelo, Mississippi looking for tomorrow and Saturday? It's a kind of boom or bust day tomorrow evening into the overnight. It could just be maybe a couple showers or some pretty feisty storms. It's a tough forecast. Saturday, though, looks a lot more significant in Tupelo. Tim, appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate that. Would you like to explain mud rain and why it happens? I'm not sure I know what that is, honestly. So maybe I should look into that. Yeah, so I don't think I missed anything. Did I miss anything, Brady, or is there anything else you want to add here at the end?
I think mud rain, is he talking about maybe the dust storm possibly happening on the backside? I
I don't.
think
I
that's
feel like I saw
what
a
he.
news article that it was raining mud somewhere recently. I feel like that might be what they're talking
Okay,
about. I didn't
okay,
read the
maybe.
article, or I don't know. Yeah, that's not what I'm
Well,
fully.
that is another factor we didn't talk about is the backside. There is going to be extreme fire weather and I guess dust storm threat on the backside. Pretty severe for Texas and Oklahoma. So for anybody
Maybe in a
living
bit of
there, there
a
is strong wind
get
threat there, and with
a haboob out of
fire.
this one. What do you think?
Oh yes, favorite weather term right
Awesome.
there.
All right.
One
So
meteorologist
yeah.
to get away with.
All right. Funny stuff. All right, folks. That's all I got for you on this Thursday evening. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. I'll be back tomorrow morning with another update. And yeah, so y'all have a good one. Stay safe. Have a way to get those watches in the mornings. I'll see you all next time.